Hello, welcome back to Madrona's Pulse Teachings. I'm Iris, and we are going to chat about the Sagittarius New Moon, which is upon us. This is happening, it depends where you are. So it could be happening for you in the evening of the 30th of November, where I am in Canada's West Coast. It's happening November 30th, but this could be happening December 1st for you. So in Pacific time, it's at 10:19 p.m. on November 30th. And I hope that you are doing well. And December is a month as well. Different, very, very different than November. But there's some really interesting cosmic conversations happening in December. And this new moon does really bring us into them. So we are dealing with a Sagittarius new moon. Okay, so we've got the sun and the moon, and they are together at 9 degrees of Sagittarius. And so just working with that first core layer of the astro conversation, we are looking at, the new moon traditionally is a time that's inviting us to become quiet, to self-reflect, to kind of go into internal places. Now, that right there is a little bit of a paradox because Sagittarius traditionally likes to go out. It likes to pursue adventurous spirit. Now, that doesn't have to be out adventuring in the world. Sagittarius can absolutely go on adventures within the mind and go into incredible realms. But there is this kind of expansive outward energy that wants to happen with Sagittarius, and we are in the cycle of the new moon, which brings us into wanting to reflect. And there is some energy in this new moon that is really emphasizing that there is reflection that might need to happen. But that said, seeding intentions. This is what a new moon in kind of the 2-week cycles that we work with the new moon and then the full moon, seeding intentions for where we are on our continuous unfolding, expanding journey. And this is seeding intentions around, especially where you have 9 degrees of Sagittarius in your house, in your natal chart, and intentions around learning, growth, imagination. Sagittarius is so wonderful for imagining what could be possible. And so especially if you've had a bit of a month in November of 2024, seeding into the Sagittarius energy of allowing yourself to imagine what can be possible. And again, working with whatever house you have this happening in your natal chart can be really useful for that. And that can happen through journaling, that can happen through conversations, that can happen through finding a book on a bookshelf and just being attracted to its title, feeling that intuitive pull. We are in a fire sign. Fire is all about the intuitive pull. It's all about intuition. And so really seeding those experiences for, growth of spirit, growth of imagination. And what is this new moon talking to? So one aspect that's really interesting is that we are carried into this new moon through this kind of last week of November through a fire trine. So the sun for this last week of November is trining our Mars in Leo and also the North Node in Aries. Okay, so a fire trine wants to ignite spirit. It wants to ignite the intuition. Now, this is also an interesting fire trine because that Mars is approaching its retrograde, which is going to happen December 6th at 6 degrees of Leo. So that Mars is slowing us down in our psyche and in our body in terms of our drive. And so sometimes we might think of a Mars in Leo that just kind of wants to shine out, to have quite a bit of passion and power going out there. This is a different Mars. This is a Mars that is slowing down and is preparing for a rather introspective journey, because Mars is getting an introspective journey through those first 6 degrees of Leo when it goes retrograde and then back into Cancer. And so there is this fire trine, but it's something that really wants to ignite our fires within, inspire us within, Okay, not necessarily to go out and change our life and change everything in kind of this overnight we can do it energy, which can be part of strong fire energy, but in more of a I'm feeling the fires burn within because something is changing. And as we know, we are in this moment of great change with the outer planets signaling change that we can't even totally understand. 2025 is bringing us into a lot of change with the outer planets. Mars is about to go retrograde. We are in process. We've been in process. We're still in process. Yes, in a certain extent, we're always in process, but there are different stages of the process, and there are bigger processes and smaller ones, and we're in it. We're kind of in all of it right now. And this new moon is seeding this kind of seeding potential, knowing that, for our spirit, for our intuition, for those fires to ignite. Aries is also part of this. That North Node in Aries is coming to the end of its journey. Talk about being another process. In 2025, the nodes are going to shift signs. But right now, we're still with them in Libra, in Aries. And, there is this strong fire intuition pull, and really listening to intuition as we move into this new moon, because Sagittarius is a fire sign, and fire brings us into intuition. And also knowing that the changes that we might be feeling, the plans that we might be making, they might take a little while. And part of that is also because this new moon is in a square to Saturn. Saturn is in Pisces. It is at 12 degrees of Pisces. So we have this square, and then of course the moon is going to keep moving ahead, and it's going to come into that exact square very soon. And then the sun will have its exact square on December 3rd. Okay, so just a couple days after this new moon. So also knowing that that sun is moving into its fuller conversation with Saturn. But again, in this new moon, the seeding, Saturn squares that Sag energy. Okay, so that's another kind of Sag tends to want to have the plan and just go for it. It wants to expand outwards, again, whether that is literally physically moving or it is just creating that adventurous plan and imagination. And Saturn comes in and it says, remember, first of all, this is a new moon. We are seeding intentions. We are doing some introspection around how we think we might need and want and yearn to expand. And Saturn says, yes, we are expanding. We are changing. Saturn is direct. Saturn is speaking to our soul path. It is in Pisces. That Saturn in Pisces can clean up a lot of very practical things, and it probably has been cleaning up very practical things in your life. But ultimately, that is so that we can move on to a new soul path. And that is part of what 2025 and 2026 are about. And so this Saturn squares this new moon, and we also may get insights about how we are moving forward and how that is part of a bigger process. And so also just expecting, there might be some slowdown. We are in Mercury retrograde. Okay, this new moon is falling within Mercury retrograde. So we are aware that we're already in a season of rethinking, reassessment, kind of looking for different directions that might be moving us along our path. And now we have a new moon square Saturn. So there might be different directions showing up. But Saturn also might have some important messages. And they might be really important because they might be about the realistic side of how to move forward for your soul. There's this beautiful intermingling of, this plane, this reality. These are the things that have to happen. Some of them are a little bit of grunt work. Some of them are things we don't always want to do. And that's where the beauty of Saturn is, finding actually kind of that meditative gaze of the things that we have to do, because they root us in and they help us feel our boundaries and our limits, not just in a relationship, but in our own life, in our own goals. And these might be goals for our soul to sing its soul song. So it's this intermingling of that kind of soul mystical element. That's what Pisces is all about. And Saturn moving forward, squaring this new moon. Rather than that just being read as like a full stop, we might get some full stops in this season. We absolutely might get some, because we also have a really interesting conversation between Mercury and Jupiter happening, squaring Saturn as well. And yet, if there is any full stop, it's because that's not the direction, and or it's not the time. Saturn takes us into sacred timing. Our mind comes up with the plan. We're like, okay, this, that's that. There's my happily ever after. Our minds do that. Media and the narratives we've been consuming for most of us for our whole lives condition us to think like that. Astrology says, no, that's not how it works. Astrology says we are co-creating. There are things that our mind just, firstly, is never going to understand in this cognitive realm. And there are other things that our body, our intuition, cosmic consciousness, psyche, it's all this dance. And Saturn in Pisces brings us into that dance. And it says there are other paths that we might need to open up to. So just paying attention, and also really listening to intuition as we move through this new moon, because we are working with fire trine, and we are working with Saturn and Pisces, who wants us to actually create the boundaries and the limits in our life and our perspectives that help us attune to an intuition that is directly connected to source, spirit, divine consciousness. So there is a lot going on. And again, we're just seeding. We're just paying attention. We're just feeling into what we feel and moving through. Remember, the new moon is the dark moon. We're not supposed to see with our normal vision. And that's where we have to get quiet so that we can see with that intuition. Okay. We also have, as I mentioned, Mercury is retrograde right now. So knowing that this new moon is happening during the last Mercury retrograde of 2024, that we're already in a cycle of kind of slowing down, reassessing. We absolutely, with this new moon, do want to slow down. Okay, so there you might need to feel a rhythm, because there is fire energy. You might feel that kind of intuition. You might feel that pulse, working with it again in the journal and conversations, bringing it into your reflective practices, because this is also, that Mars is slowing down. There's a square to Saturn. This is not necessarily saying just go out and do it. Go out and do the things that are happening in this moment and are calling to you. And yes, and also know that the bigger overarching plan that they're moving towards, that is probably going to change a little bit. And so just have that foresight. And Mercury is coming into its opposition with Jupiter. Okay, so during this new moon, Jupiter is at 17 degrees of Gemini, Mercury is at 20 degrees of Sag. So they're going to keep moving. They're going to keep moving. Okay, so some folks are newer to my channel. Come here. And we are having an animal interruption for a moment. Here is Finnegan. He almost always starts chatting when I'm talking about Gemini and Gemini energy. It's very interesting. I find it. And so for those that are also new to my channel, because there were questions in the last video, whose cat is that? What is this? I live between urban rhythms and rural rhythms. I was in Toronto for a while. I'm back in rural rhythms, and I live with a lot of cats here and also 2 dogs, and they will make themselves known, as you have witnessed. Okay, we have Jupiter in Gemini and Mercury in Sag, and they're coming into their opposition. Okay, and so we're going to move with that after this new moon, but it's already in play. And that right there also suggests that there is a reworking, okay? There is a reworking, and when Mercury comes into its square with Saturn, it's also going to be conjunct the Sun, okay? So that's happening December 5th. So there's a lot of energy that this new moon is seeding us into that then we're moving with and through in the following week. And I also feel that there could be a lot of insights with this energy. Okay, starting with the new moon, moving through those few days after, as we've got this cosmic conversation going on between the Sun and Mercury retrograde, Jupiter retrograde, Saturn direct. we could have insights that we couldn't actually see a month ago, that we couldn't see a few weeks ago. And that's where the retrograde energy can actually be lovely when we do slow down, when we do allow our perspective to open. It can show us where we are going and where we couldn't have seen because things needed to be worked out. And that could absolutely be coming, especially as we come in to these few days after the new moon. We might get some clarity. It also, with this type of energy, we have to be open to that clarity coming and it being something that our kind of ego mind, the plan that we had hatched, it might not be what we thought. And so it's allowing that to happen in its timing, coming into it, but also just opening to that there is potential insights that are emerging and that we are co-creating. We're not supposed to know exactly how it's all unfolding, and listening to that intuition. The only other thing I want to mention for this new moon is that Venus, who is at 23 degrees of Capricorn, is trine our Uranus retrograde at 24 of Taurus. Okay, so there's this Earth trine. And Venus in Capricorn, again, she is wanting us to come into our values. She is wanting us to structure our goals. Capricorn is related to Saturn, to structure our goals around our values. And here, Venus in Capricorn has a journey. What are my values? What are the values that I have been taught my whole life I'm supposed to align to, so that especially in social realms, I can climb a social ladder, I can be validated, I can find that external validation. If Venus is in Capricorn and she's going after those goals at some point, and they're not actually aligned to her soul, to her desires, to her values, at some point she burns out. Okay, and so when Venus, transiting Venus, comes through Capricorn, she helps us, Capricorn, yes, Capricorn is about our relationship to the social. It's also about our relationship to natural law, to elder wisdom, to those deep practices of elder wisdom. And she is trining Uranus retrograde in Taurus, who is wanting to wake us up through this Taurus journey of radical sustainability, of radical authenticity in our embodiments and our relationship with nature. So there is something also coming on in that Earth trine that can ground us, okay? It can ground us in really doing those practices that get you into your body. It's a little bit chilly where I am to walk barefoot in the earth, but those practices that take us into nature, just because that energy is strong and it is seeing us through. And I'm going to be back talking about more things that are unfolding in December, but I am sending you new moon blessings. Be well.